The message came on a Tuesday morning in the year 2347. Every radio station on Earth went silent. Every television screen flickered. And then a voice spoke in perfect English, perfect Mandarin, perfect Spanish, perfect every language that humans had ever created. People of Earth, you are not alone. We are coming to meet you. Lena Morris was drinking her coffee when the announcement came. She was 53 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many political battles. She worked as a diplomat for the United Earth government, spending her days negotiating trade agreements and border disputes. She never expected to negotiate with aliens, but 3 weeks later, she stood on the observation deck of humanity's best starship, the Endurance, watching something impossible approach through the darkness of space. The alien vessel was the size of a city. It moved without engines that Lena could see, gliding through the void like a silver ghost. Lights flickered along its surface in patterns that hurt her eyes if she looked too long. "That ship is bigger than anything we've ever built," said Captain Daniel Webb, standing beside her. He was a calm man from Nebraska, 60 years old, with hands that never shook and a voice that never rose above a comfortable volume. He had commanded ships for 30 years and had never seen anything like this. "It's bigger than most of our cities," Lena replied. The alien delegation materialized in the docking bay without warning. One moment the room was empty. The next moment, 3 beings stood there, surrounded by fading blue light. They were called the Velthari. They stood 9 feet tall, with bodies that seemed made of crystal and metal. Their faces had no expressions that humans could read. Their eyes glowed with soft white light. The leader stepped forward. A device on his chest hummed, and when he spoke, the words came out in English. "I am Ambassador Sothrix. I speak for the Galactic Concord, a union of 17 spacefaring species. We have watched your world for some time. You have achieved basic space travel. You have not destroyed yourselves with weapons of mass destruction. This places you above average among young species." Lena stepped forward, keeping her voice steady. "We are honored to meet you. I am Ambassador Lena Morris. I speak for the United Earth government." Sothrix tilted his head. The gesture might have meant curiosity. It might have meant nothing at all. "You will be granted provisional membership in the Concord," he said. "This is a great opportunity for your species. In time, perhaps a few hundred years, you may develop enough to contribute something useful." Lena felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had negotiated with difficult people before. She recognized condescension when she heard it. "We look forward to learning from the Concord," she said carefully. "Yes," Sothrix replied. "You have much to learn." The tour of the Velthari ship lasted 6 hours. Lena and Daniel walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever, past machines that did things they could not understand, through rooms filled with wonders that made their best technology look like children's toys. The Velthari guides explained everything with simple words. They spoke slowly, as if talking to people who might not understand complex ideas. In the medical bay, they showed devices that could regrow a lost limb in 2 hours. "Your species still uses surgery," one guide noted. "How quaint." In the engine room, they showed drives that bent the fabric of space itself. "You are still using chemical rockets for some purposes, yes? Interesting that you have survived this long." In the weapons bay, they showed cannons that could crack a planet's crust with a single shot. "These are defensive only, of course. The Concord has not fought a major war in 6,000 years. We have no need for aggression." Through it all, the Velthari never looked directly at the humans. They answered questions, but only briefly. They smiled, but the smiles never reached their glowing eyes. When the tour ended, Lena and Daniel returned to the Endurance in silence. They walked to the captain's private office and closed the door behind them. "They don't hate us," Daniel said finally. "No," Lena agreed. "They don't fear us. They're not threatened by us." "No." Daniel sat down heavily in his chair. "They don't think about us at all. We're nothing to them. We are furniture." Background noise. Lena walked to the window and stared out at the massive Velthari ship. It hung in space like a silver moon, beautiful and terrible and completely beyond anything humanity could match. I've spent my whole career dealing with people who underestimate others, she said quietly. Countries that thought they were superior. Leaders who believed they were special. They all learned eventually that underestimating people is a mistake. The Velthari have been traveling between stars for 12,000 years, Daniel replied. We've been doing it for less than 300. Maybe they're right to look down on us. Lena turned to face him. Her eyes were hard. Maybe they are, she said. Or maybe they've forgotten something important. What's that? They've forgotten what it's like to be young, to be hungry, to have something to prove. They've been at the top so long, they've forgotten that things can change. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. What do? We smile. We nod. We accept their provisional membership and their back row seat and their hand-me-down technology. Lena's voice was calm, but there was iron underneath. And we wait. We learn. We grow. And then, Lena smiled. It was not a warm smile. And then we show them what humans can do when everyone counts them out. The next day, the United Earth government formally accepted membership in the Galactic Concord. Humanity was given one seat in the assembly, located in the back row behind a species of methane-breathing slugs. They were granted permission to colonize 3 star systems that no other species wanted. They were provided with basic technology that the Velthari considered too outdated to use themselves. The galaxy welcomed humanity the way a wealthy family might welcome a distant, its poor relative. With polite words and empty smiles, and the quiet assumption that these newcomers would never amount to anything. Important Ambassador Sathrix gave a brief speech at the welcoming ceremony. Humanity joins us as our newest and most junior member, he said. We wish them well in their development. Perhaps in 1,000 years, they will have something to offer.
Oh.
Polite applause rippled through the assembly. A few delegates glanced at the human section with mild curiosity before returning to their own conversations in the back row. Lena Morris sat with her hands folded in her lap. Her face showed nothing but polite gratitude. But inside, she was making plans. The galaxy saw humans as just people, ordinary, unremarkable, barely worth noticing. They had no idea what was coming. 5 years passed after humanity joined the Galactic Concord. Nothing much changed, at least nothing that the great powers of the galaxy noticed. Humans built their colonies on the 3 poor systems they had been given. They attended assembly meetings where nobody listened to them. They received old technology from species who had moved on to better things. They were ignored, overlooked, forgotten. This suited some humans just fine. On the colony world of New Providence, Grace Kim sat in a small metal shelter and watched rain fall against the window. She was 28 years old, with short black hair and quick hands that were always building something. She had graduated at the top of her class in engineering. She had dreamed of designing starships that would carry humanity across the galaxy instead. She was stuck on a muddy planet, maintaining power generators that the Velthari had thrown away 50 years ago. The reactor is running at 60% efficiency, said her friend Henry Cole. Walking into the shelter with 2 cups of coffee, he was tall and thin, with a permanent look of mild confusion that hit a sharp mind. That's actually pretty good for this model. Grace took the coffee without looking up from her computer screen. It's terrible. We're wasting 40% of our power output. The Velthari design just dumps excess heat into subspace because they have energy to spare. We don't have that luxury, Henry said. Exactly. Grace pulled up a holographic diagram. Blue light filling the dim shelter. That's why I've been working on this. Henry leaned closer, squinting at the complex design. What am I looking at? A modification to the reactor cooling system. Instead of dumping heat into subspace, we capture it and convert it back to usable energy. Grace's fingers moved through the hologram, highlighting different components. It's not elegant. The Velthari would probably laugh at it. But it would increase our efficiency by a factor of 3. Henry was quiet for a moment. That's impossible. It's not impossible. It's just difficult. Grace finally looked up, her eyes bright with excitement. The Velthari never needed to do this. They've had unlimited energy for 10,000 years. Why would they bother making things more efficient? But we don't have unlimited energy. We have scraps. We have leftovers. And when you only have scraps, you learn to use every single piece. Have you told anyone about this? Not yet. I wanted to make sure it worked first. Grace smiled. It works. 6 months later, Grace's reactor modification was installed on every human ship and colony. The improvement was exactly what she had predicted. Human vessels could now travel farther on less fuel than ever before. The Galactic Concorde did not notice. Meanwhile, on Earth, a different kind of work was happening. Marcus Brown was a professor at Columbia University. He taught sociology, he studied how groups of people behaved and why. For the past 3 years, he had been conducting research that no one in the Concorde would have considered important. He was studying aliens. Look at this data, he said to his research assistant, Diane Fuller. They sat in a basement office surrounded by screens showing charts and graphs and photographs. I've analyzed every species in the Concorde, their history, their culture, their behavior patterns. Diane was 25 years old, sharp and ambitious. She had joined Marcus's team because everyone else thought his research was a waste of time. That usually meant the research was interesting. What did you find? She asked. They're all old. Marcus pulled up a timeline that stretched across centuries. The Velthari have been spacefaring for 12,000 years. The Kroth for 8,000. The youngest species in the Concorde has been among the stars for 2,000 years. They're all ancient civilizations. We knew that already. Yes, but look at what comes with being ancient. Marcus highlighted different sections of the data. They've all reached a certain level of technology and stopped pushing forward. They've achieved a certain population and stopped growing. They've expanded to a certain size and stopped expanding. They've settled. Diane frowned. Settled how? Settled in every way. They make small improvements to things, but they don't revolutionize anything. They don't take big risks. They don't try wild new ideas. They've been doing everything the same way for thousands of years, and they've forgotten that other ways are possible. Why? Because they don't need to change. They're comfortable. They're safe. Change is uncomfortable. Change is scary. When you've been doing something one way for 5,000 years, trying something different feels insane. Marcus leaned back in his chair. But we're different. How? We've been spacefaring for less than 4 centuries. We're children compared to them. And children do something that old civilizations forget how to do. Diane waited. Children grow, Marcus said. Children change. Children look at something that's been done the same way forever and ask why it can't be done differently. On the colony world of Kepler's Hope, a young doctor named Patricia Santos was discovering something similar. She worked in a small clinic, treating colonists who got sick or injured. She had been given Velthari medical equipment, advanced machines that could diagnose almost any illness instantly, but the machines only worked for problems they recognized. When colonists developed new illnesses, conditions caused by alien bacteria or unusual environmental factors, the Velthari machines simply displayed error messages, so Patricia learned to work without them. She studied the old medical texts from Earth, techniques that human doctors had developed over centuries of fighting diseases with limited tools. She combined ancient knowledge with alien technology, creating new treatments that neither humans nor Velthari had ever used before. When a strange fever swept through Kepler's Hope, killing patients faster than the Velthari machines could diagnose, Patricia found the cure. She worked for 72 hours without sleep, testing combinations of treatments. Refusing to give up, she saved 200 lives. The Galactic Concorde did not notice. In boardrooms and laboratories, and small shelters across human space, similar stories were happening. Engineers finding new solutions, scientists asking new questions, doctors developing new treatments, soldiers training in new tactics. None of it seemed important. None of it made headlines in the great news networks of the Concorde. Humanity was still the youngest and weakest member of the galactic community, still sitting in the back row, still being ignored. But something was changing. Ambassador Lena Morris saw it. She traveled between human worlds, meeting the people who were quietly revolutionizing everything they touched. She listened to Grace Kim explain her reactor modifications. She read Marcus Brown's research on alien psychology. She visited Patricia Santos's clinic and watched her treat patients with techniques no one else in the galaxy used. "They think we're nothing," Lena said to Daniel Webb during one of their regular communications. He was still commanding the Endurance, patrolling the borders of human space. "They think we're children playing with toys. Are they wrong?" Daniel asked. "They're wrong about what children can do." Lena smiled. "Children learn. Children adapt. Children grow into something new. And when we're done growing, that's the question, isn't it?" Lena looked out at the stars. "I don't think anyone in the galaxy is ready for the answer." Years passed. Humans continued to improve, to innovate, to grow. They remained quiet about it. They didn't boast. They didn't demand recognition. They just kept working. The galaxy continued to see them as just people, ordinary, unremarkable. The galaxy had no idea that ordinary people, given enough time and enough reason, could change everything. And time was running out. Somewhere beyond the edge of the galaxy, something was waking up. Something hungry. Something that would force the Concord to face a threat it had not imagined in 6,000 years of peace. When that threat arrived, the ancient powers would discover that sometimes the youngest, weakest, most overlooked members of a community are exactly what you need. They would discover what humans could do. But first, the darkness had to come. The Zerathi came without warning. They emerged from the darkness between galaxies. From the empty void where no stars shine and no life should exist. Their ships were nightmares made solid, organic vessels that pulsed and writhed like living things. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They simply arrived and began to feed. The first world they struck was Velthri Prime 7, a colony of 12 million beings. The Zeruthi fleet surrounded the planet like a swarm of hungry insects. They extended tendrils of dark energy that touched the surface and began to drain. They took everything. Within 6 hours, Velthri Prime 7 was dead. Not destroyed. Dead. The Zerathi had consumed every living thing, every power source, every scrap of energy. The planet that remained was a gray husk, corpse floating in space. 12 million Velthari died in a single day. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time in 6,000 years, the Galactic Concord faced an enemy it did not understand. A threat it could not easily defeat. Ambassador Lena Morris received the news on the colony world of New Providence. She was 58 years old now, her hair fully gray, her eyes still sharp. She read the reports in silence, then called an emergency meeting with every human leader she could reach. "This is different," she told them. "The Concord has never faced anything like this." "What do we know about the Zerathi?" asked Admiral Jonathan Pike, commander of the human fleet. He was a large man with a scarred face and hands that had seen combat. "Almost nothing. They don't respond to communication attempts. They don't seem to have individual minds that we can identify. They just consume." Lena pulled up the images from Velthri Prime 7. The room went silent as they saw what remained of the colony. They're drawn to energy signatures. The bigger the energy output, the more attractive the target. What is the Concord doing about it? That's the problem. Lena's voice was grim. They're arguing. The Galactic Assembly had been in emergency session for 3 days. Every species was represented, every voice raised in fear and confusion. But no one could agree on what to do. The Velthari wanted to negotiate. "We must understand their motivations," Ambassador Sathrix argued, his crystalline face showing something that might have been grief. "Every species wants something. We simply need to discover what they desire." The Kroth wanted to retreat. "We should consolidate our forces around our core worlds," their delegate clicked, his insectoid body trembling. "Let them consume the outer territories. Eventually they will move on." "Move on to where?" demanded the Synthary representative, a being of pure light contained in a mechanical shell. "They come from outside the galaxy. This is their destination, not a stop along the way." "Then we fight," shouted the Draxian delegate, a massive creature with 4 arms and a voice like thunder. Fight with what? Sothrix replied. We sent a battle fleet against them at the Kepler Nebula. 47 ships. The most advanced vessels in Velthary space. He paused. None returned. While the assembly argued, the Zerathi consumed 2 more worlds. Lena Morris sat in the back row of the assembly, watching the debate spiral in endless circles. Beside her, Captain Daniel Webb had arrived from patrol duty, his face tight with frustration. They've been at this for 3 days, he said quietly. 3 days of talking while people die. They're scared, Lena replied. They haven't faced a real threat in thousands of years. They've forgotten what it feels like. What do we do? Lena was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood up. The motion was so unusual that the argument in the assembly actually paused. Delegates turned to look at the human section, confusion evident on their various faces. Humans rarely spoke. Humans certainly never interrupted. The Concord recognizes the human delegation, Sothrix said, his tone suggesting that this was merely a formality before returning to the important conversation. Ambassador. Lena walked to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. I have been listening to this debate for 3 days. I have heard excellent arguments for negotiation, for retreat, for resistance. All of them have merit. Your point, Ambassador? Sothrix asked. My point is that while you argue about whether to talk or run or fight, the Zerathi are still moving forward. They don't care about our debates. They don't care about our strategies. They simply consume. Lena activated her personal display, projecting a map of the galaxy above the assembly floor. By my calculations, at their current rate of advance, they will reach the core worlds in 18 months. Every world they consume makes them stronger. Every day we wait makes them harder to stop. A murmur ran through the assembly. Humans propose action. The question came from the Kroth delegate, and there was something in his clicking voice that might have been mockery. Humans propose to fight, Lena replied. The murmur became a buzz. Several delegates laughed openly. The Velthary ambassador tilted his head in what was probably pity. With respect, Ambassador Morris Sothrix said, Humanity's military capacity is ... limited. Your entire fleet would not equal a single Velthary battle group. What could you possibly contribute to a war against the Zerathi? Lena smiled. It was not a friendly smile. You're right that we don't have your weapons, she said. We don't have your ships or your technology or your 12,000 years of advancement. What we have is something different. And what is that? Fresh eyes. New ideas. Lena's voice grew stronger. You've been building weapons the same way for millennia. You've been fighting wars with strategies developed before humans learned to make fire. The Zerathi are something new, something your old methods can't handle. Maybe that means you need something new to fight them. Silence fell over the assembly. For the first time, Lena had their full attention. The Zerathi hunt energy signatures, she continued. They're drawn to power, like moths to flame. Your strategy has been to minimize your energy output, to hide, to run. But what if we did the opposite? What if we gave them exactly what they wanted? You suggest attracting them. The Synthry representative sounded horrified. I suggest baiting them, luring them to a location of our choosing, where we control the terrain. Lena pulled up new data on her display. Human engineers have developed technology that the Concord has never seen. Innovations born from necessity because we didn't have the luxury of unlimited resources. We've been experimenting with energy manipulation, ways to redirect and focus power that your species never needed to explore. Even if you could lure them, Sothrix said slowly, what would you do when they arrived? Lena's smile widened. We would show them that humans are not prey. We would show them that we bite back. The assembly erupted in argument. Some delegates called her plan madness. Others demanded details. A few, the younger species, who had not forgotten what it meant to struggle, looked at the human ambassador with something like hope. Sothrix raised his hand for silence. The Concord does not typically authorize military operations by junior member species, he said. However, these are not typical circumstances. He paused, his glowing eyes fixed on Lena. If humanity wishes to attempt this plan, we will not stop you. But we will not support you either. You will receive no additional ships, no additional weapons, no additional personnel. We don't need your ships, Lena replied. We just need you to stay out of our way. Very well. Sothrix's voice was heavy with doubt. May whatever gods you worship watch over you, Ambassador. You will need divine intervention. Lena turned and walked back to her seat. As she passed Daniel Webb, she saw his eyes were bright with something fierce. Did you just volunteer humanity to fight an enemy that destroyed a Velthari fleet? He asked quietly. I did, with no support from the Concord. That's correct. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. Good, he said. Now, they won't be in our way. Lena sat down and looked out at the assembly. At the ancient species who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, who saw humanity as nothing more than children playing with toys, they were about to learn what those children could do. They called it Operation. Lighthouse, the plan was simple in concept and insane in execution. Humanity would build the largest energy beacon ever created, a signal so bright it would shine across 100 light years. They would plant this beacon in the middle of empty space, far from any inhabited world. And when the Zirathi came to feed, humanity would be waiting. Grace Kim stood in the cargo bay of the human carrier, Resolute, surrounded by equipment that had never been tested in combat. She was 43 years old now, her hair cut short, dark circles under her eyes from months of sleepless nights. The reactor modifications she had designed 15 years ago were just the beginning. In the years since, she had developed something much more ambitious. The beacon is ready, she told Captain Daniel Webb. He was 61 years old, commanding the Resolute and the human fleet that surrounded it. We can activate it whenever you give the order. And the weapon? Grace hesitated. It's not really a weapon. It's more like a redirect. The Zirathi feed on energy. They absorb it into their organic ships and use it to power themselves. My device doesn't attack them directly. It turns their own feeding process against them. Explain it to me like I'm not an engineer. Grace smiled tiredly. Imagine you're drinking from a glass of water. Now imagine that the water suddenly turns to fire inside your mouth. That's what this does. The Zirathi tried to absorb energy from the beacon, but instead of powering their ships, the energy becomes destructive. Their own hunger becomes the weapon that kills them. Daniel nodded slowly. Will it work? In simulations, yes. In reality, Grace shrugged. This has never been done before. By anyone, ever. That seems to be our specialty. The human fleet gathered in the Kepler expanse, a region of space notable only for its emptiness. 37 ships in total, representing almost everything humanity could spare. It was a tiny force, compared to the armadas of the Concord. But every vessel had been modified with Grace's efficiency technology. Every captain had been trained in tactics that no other species used. Every crew member knew they might not survive. Admiral Jonathan Pike commanded the overall operation from the bridge of the heavy cruiser Defiance. He had assembled the best officers humanity had to offer. Veterans who had spent their careers being told they were inferior to alien counterparts. Today we prove them wrong, he told his crew before the operation began. Today we show the galaxy what humans are made of. The beacon activated at 0600 hours. It was beautiful and terrible, a pillar of light and energy that blazed against the darkness of space. Sensors across the sector detected it instantly. There was no way to miss it. Now came the waiting Lena. Lena Morris was not a soldier. She had no place in a battle fleet. But she had convinced Admiral Pike to let her observe from the Resolute far behind the combat lines. She stood on the bridge beside Grace Kim, watching the sensors and feeling utterly helpless. How long until they arrive? She asked. Impossible to say, Grace replied. We don't know their exact location or their travel speed, but if our calculations are right, they should detect the beacon within a few hours. After that, she spread her hands. 6 days passed. 6 days of watching, waiting, wondering if the Zirathi would take the bait. 6 days of tension so thick it seemed to have physical weight. Crews who had trained for years began to doubt. Officers who had believed in the plan started to question. Then the sensors screamed. "Contact," reported the tactical officer, her voice tight with controlled fear. "Multiple contacts emerging from subspace." I'm reading. 73 vessels. The main display filled with images of the Zerathi fleet. The alien ships were organic nightmares, shapes that belonged in fever dreams rather than real space. They pulsed with dark energy, writhing and twisting as they moved toward the beacon. 73 ships against humanity's 37. All vessels. "This is Admiral Pike," the commander's voice came through the fleet-wide channel. "Hold positions. Do not engage until my command. Let them come to us." The Zerathi approached in a loose formation, spreading out to surround the beacon from all directions. They moved with eerie purpose, drawn inexorably toward the massive energy signature. As they drew closer, tendrils of darkness extended from their holes, reaching for the light. "They're beginning to feed," Grace reported, her eyes fixed on her instruments. "Energy absorption starting in ... 3, ... 2, ... 1. The leading Zerathi ship touched the beacon with its feeding tendrils. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the alien vessel began to glow. It started as a faint light inside the organic hull, barely visible against the brightness of the beacon. But the glow spread rapidly, pulsing through the ship like fire through dry wood. The Zerathi vessel shuddered, its tendrils retracting, its movements becoming erratic, and then it exploded. The blast was silent in the vacuum of space, but the visual was spectacular. The Zerathi ship simply came apart, its organic matter scattering in all directions, its dark energy dissipating into nothing. For a heartbeat, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then Admiral Pike's voice cut through the silence. "All vessels, engage. Fire at will." The human fleet surged forward. It was not the disciplined formation of a Velthari battle group or the overwhelming numbers of a Kroth swarm. It was something messier, more chaotic, more human. Ships moved in patterns that changed from moment to moment. Captains making decisions on the fly, crews adapt. In two conditions as they developed, the Zerathi were not prepared for this. They had consumed civilizations that fought by rules, by patterns, by strategies developed over millennia. They had learned to predict their enemies, to counter their moves, to overwhelm their defenses. But humans did not fight by rules. Humans improvised. Humans surprised. Captain Daniel Webb led the Resolute into the heart of the enemy formation, drawing fire from a dozen Zerathi vessels. His ship shuddered under the assault. Hull breaches opening along the starboard side. "Damage report," he said calmly. "Decks 7 through 9 compromised. We've lost auxiliary power, root power from the weapons systems. Sir, that will reduce our firepower by 40%. "Do it." Daniel's voice was steady. "We don't need to kill them all. We just need to keep their attention." While the Resolute drew fire, a squadron of smaller ships swept around the enemy flank. They were fast, maneuverable, powered by Grace's efficiency engines that let them change direction in ways that should have been impossible. They struck at the Zerathi from unexpected angles, targeting the feeding tendrils, disrupting the energy absorption that the alien ships needed to survive. Grace watched from her console as her technology was tested in real combat for the first time. The Zerathi ships that tried to feed from human vessels found themselves poisoned. Their own hunger turned against them. Not every attack worked. Not every ship was saved. But enough succeeded to matter. The battle raged for 11 hours. 11 hours of chaos and fire and death. Human ships were lost. Good people died. But the Zerathi died too, their organic hulls torn apart by weapons that should have been too primitive to hurt them. Their feeding tendrils turned into conduits of destruction. When it was over, 41 Zerathi ships had been destroyed. The remaining 32 fled, broadcasting signals that human linguists would later identify as the first recorded instance of Zerathi fear. The human fleet had lost 12 ships. 847 people had died, but they had won. Admiral Pike's voice came through the fleet channel, tired but triumphant. "All vessels, this is the Admiral. The enemy is in retreat. I repeat, the enemy is in retreat." We did it. We actually did it. On the bridge of the Resolute, Grace Kim sat down heavily in her chair. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes were wet. She had just watched her technology save the galaxy, and the weight of it was almost too much to bear. Lena Morris stood beside her, looking out at the debris field that marked humanity's first major victory. "They ran," Lena said softly. "The Zerathi actually ran." "They've never had to run before," Grace replied. "They've never met anything that could hurt them. They have now." Somewhere in the darkness, the surviving Zerathi were carrying a message back to their kind. The galaxy was not as defenseless as they had believed. There was a species here that fought differently, thought differently, refused to surrender. The galaxy had seen humans as just people, ordinary, unremarkable. The galaxy was about to change its mind. The news of the Battle of Kepler Expanse spread across the galaxy like a shockwave. At first, no one believed it. The Zerathi, the monsters that had devoured worlds without resistance, had been defeated. Not by the mighty Velthari, not by the ancient Kroth, but by humans. The youngest species in the Concord? The ones who sat in the back row. The ones who were supposed to be nothing. Ambassador Sothrix requested a meeting with Lena Morris 3 days after the battle. She met him on neutral ground, a space station at the edge of Velthari territory. He looked different than she remembered. The geometric planes of his crystalline face seemed softer somehow, less certain. "I owe you an apology," Sothrix said. Lena raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For underestimating your species. For dismissing your capabilities. For treating you as children when you were." He paused, searching for the right word. "Something else? What are we then?" "I don't know," Sothrix admitted. "That's what concerns me. We have studied humanity for decades. We thought we understood you. Limited technology. Short lifespans. Fragile bodies. By every measure we use, you should be unremarkable. And yet you did something that the greatest powers in the galaxy could not do." Sothrix's glowing eyes met hers. "How?" Lena thought about the question for a long moment. She thought about Grace Kim in her muddy shelter, building impossible machines from leftover parts. She thought about Marcus Brown in his basement office, studying aliens while aliens ignored him. She thought about Daniel Webb, calm and steady, leading his ship into battle against overwhelming odds. "You want to know our secret?" she said finally. "We don't have one. We're exactly what you always thought we were. Ordinary people. Short-lived, fragile, limited in countless ways. Then how did you win? Because ordinary people, when they have something to prove, are capable of extraordinary things." Lena smiled. "You've been at the top for so long, you've forgotten what it's like to climb. We've been climbing our entire existence. We've never known anything else." The Galactic Assembly convened 1 week after the battle. For the first time in living memory, the human delegation was not seated in the back row. A new seat had been prepared for them, closer to the front, among the species whose voices actually mattered. Lena walked to the podium and looked out at the gathered representatives of 17 civilizations. Many of them were looking at her with expressions she had never seen before: respect, curiosity, and in some cases, fear. "Thank you for this recognition," she said. "But I want to be clear about something. Humans did not fight the Zerathi for glory. We did not fight them to prove a point. We fought them because someone had to, and no one else was willing." She paused, letting the words settle. The Battle of Kepler Expanse was not the end. The Zerathi are still out there. They're wounded but not destroyed. They will learn from their defeat. They will adapt. They will return. Lena's voice hardened. "When they do, will the Concord be ready?" "What do you propose?" asked the Kroth delegate. "Cooperation. Real cooperation, not the polite dismissal that humans have received for the past decade. Our technology is different from yours. Our strategies are different. Our way of thinking is different. These differences are not weaknesses. They are strengths that can benefit everyone. You wish us to learn from humans?" The question came from a Velthari delegate, and there was something almost painful in his voice. "I wish us to learn from each other." Lena spread her hands. The Concorde has achieved wonders that humanity can barely imagine. But you've also been doing things the same way for thousands of years. Maybe it's time to try something new. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Old prejudices died hard. Species that had looked down on humans for generations struggled to accept that they might have something to learn from the newcomers. But things were changing. Grace. Kim was invited to present her efficiency technology to the Veltheri Science Council. Engineers who had dismissed human innovations as primitive curiosities now studied her designs with genuine interest. Within a year, reactor modifications had been adopted by 3 other Concorde species. Marcus Brown's research on alien psychology was published in the most prestigious academic journals in the galaxy. His insights into the differences between old and young civilizations sparked debates that would continue for decades. Other species began to look at themselves differently, questioning assumptions they had never examined before. Patricia Santos, the doctor from Kepler's Hope, was recruited to lead a joint medical research initiative. Her combination of human creativity and alien technology produced treatments that neither species could have developed alone. An Admiral, Jonathan Pike, was appointed to the first-ever Joint Concorde Military Command, working alongside Veltheri and Krath officers to develop new defensive strategies against the Zarathi threat. 5 years after the Battle of Kepler Expanse, Lena Maurice stood on the observation deck of a new space station, watching ships from a dozen species moving through the stars. She was 63 years old now, her body showing its age, but her eyes still sharp. Daniel Webb stood beside her, as he often did. He had retired from active command, but he still visited often. "Do you remember what you said to me after our first meeting with the Veltheri?" he asked. Lena smiled. "I said they had forgotten what it was like to be young. To be hungry? To have something to prove? Do you think they're remembering now? Some of them. The smart ones?" Lena watched a human ship passing alongside a Veltheri cruiser, the 2 vessels moving in perfect formation. Change comes slowly to old civilizations. But it comes. We just needed to give them a reason. By beating an enemy they couldn't beat themselves. By showing them that different isn't the same as worse. That young isn't the same as weak. That ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Lena's voice was quiet but firm. They saw us as just people. And they were right. We are just people. That's exactly what makes us dangerous. The Zarathi returned 3 years later, as Lena had predicted. They came in greater numbers with new weapons, new tactics learned from their defeat. But the galaxy that met them was different too. Human engineers had modified Veltheri weapons. Krath soldiers had adopted human combat tactics. The species of the Concorde had learned to work together in ways they never had before, combining ancient knowledge with fresh perspectives. The second war against the Zarathi lasted 8